The next question is from Steve Horn. There it is. He's a freshman. He's a political science and journalism and a pre-law major. What would your ideal plan for ending the war in Iraq be?
The plan that I'm about to lay out for you is one that has been was actually written in part by a Republican, interestingly enough, a guy named Larry Korb, who was a deputy defense secretary under Reagan, and an academic named Bruce Catulus, who works, I think, in Georgetown. And this is a sensible, thoughtful plan which most Americans, I think, would support. That is, the first thing we do is to get the National Guard and Reserves home. They were never intended to be used in a place like Iraq in the first place, and it really hurt our readiness here at home to have them pinned down in Iraq. The second thing we do, and this is over a period of about 12 to 18 months, the second thing we do is to take 20,000 troops that are currently in Iraq and send them to Afghanistan. Afghanistan really is a war that matters, and if the Taliban were to take back Afghanistan, that would, unlike Iraq, would become a nidus of terrorism. The third thing to do, and this was not true before we went into Iraq, but there are some Al-Qaeda and terrorists in Iraq now. They were not there before we went in, but we now have to deal with them. This is George Bush's legacy to us, is Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And we need some special ops troops to remain in the Middle East, but not in Iraq, where they simply provide a reason for the Sunni and Shia to fight among each other and to use bombs on each other. And then the last group of folks that we would need to get out, which would be approximately 30 to 60,000, depending on how fast the early drawdown goes, is a group that we would use for training the Iraqi police with a clear deadline as to when to bring them out, when we would bring them out, which would in no case exceed 18 months. That's a reasonable, thoughtful timetable to get out of Iraq without endangering our national security and giving the Iraqi government, should there ever be one worthy of the name, the opportunity to get themselves together. It is not our job to make sure to heal the feuds among the different factions of Iraq. Despite the fact that we got in there under some bad circumstances, we owe something to the people of Iraq. I think we can make it clear that when there is a deadline, they have to be ready by that deadline and get our troops to come home.
The next question is from Ashley Pashke. There she is. It's her 5th year. She's a biochemistry and pre-medical studies major. What do you feel it will take for healthcare to become more equalized among the U.S. population?
Well, thank you for doing that. I also, as you probably know, I'm a physician, I'm an internist, and so congratulations, and hope you get in. There are lots of different views on this. Let me tell you some general parameters. First of all, we are the only industrialized democracy in the world that does not have a health care plan for everybody. The only one in the entire world. Secondly, the American people always say they want more change than they actually do. So we should not think that we can throw up the system up in the air and start something entirely new that nobody's ever seen before. That's not going to work. And because, for the same reason, we can't put something in a year that's suddenly going to cover everybody. I would be delighted to do that, but let's be realistic about the politics. So here's what I propose. Essentially, up to 25 or 30, we ought to use S-chip. It already exists. Everybody understands it. Why not cover everybody? And frankly, a lot of the uninsured under 30 are folks that aren't going to buy insurance, even under some kind of a mandate. If you give somebody a voucher to buy health insurance at the age of 22, they're probably going to get a Harley instead. And so, I think we just ought to cover everybody. We did this in Vermont. We covered everybody under 18 in Vermont. We did it for free. We didn't even have to raise taxes. The under 30 group doesn't use much health care. Either you get something really awful, like a terrible accident or malignancy, or it's basically a series of well-patient checkups. And mostly it's well-patient checkups. So there's no reason, and the 30-year-old group is so transitory. You're in college, you're out of college, you're working for the summer, you're starting a small business, you're working for a small business. I just want to get this over with, cover everybody. You can do it essentially for free. Canada manages to cover everybody for free. Secondly, Medicare. Now, I know the Republicans are all calling Medicare socialized medicine, They called it socialized medicine in 1964 when they wouldn't vote for it. Well, I'm incredibly thankful that my mother is on Medicare, and she has that security, and so is everybody else over 65. We ought to make Medicare available for everybody. We can't do it all at once. First, we'll all bring the age down to 55. It is dirt cheap to insure people under 30. It is very expensive to insure people over 55. So this one we're going to have to figure out a way to pay for, and we cannot do it all at once, but we can do it. If you did that over an 8-year period of the next Democratic presidents in office, we can make sure that we join every single other industrialized nation in the face of the earth and have a healthcare system that works for everybody. I'll tell you one more thing about this. The business community is ready to get on board with us. The business community has always resisted this for various reasons. But it turns out now that one of the biggest problems we have in creating jobs in America is that our business people have to pay for health care as a bottom line cost, which is going up and has gone up at 3 times the rate of inflation for 25 consecutive years. And the people that we compete with don't have to do that. It is cheaper for General Motors to make cars in Canada than it is in the United States, let alone China, because in Canada, the car companies don't have to pay for health insurance, even though they pay somewhat higher taxes. And in the United States, they do. General Motors spends more money per car on health insurance than they do on steel. We need a change in our healthcare system in America, and only the Democrats will do that.
The next question is from Anna Lemberger. Stand up. She's a freshman and she's undecided what her major will be. And her question is, what are your plans to make college and textbooks more affordable?
The college is easier than the textbooks. Textbooks is really complicated, and my suggestion is the best way to make textbooks affordable is to get the professors to stop assigning expensive ones. The problem is they've written a lot of them, and so that's a tough one. That was not an applause from the professor. That was a parent, right? The college is not easy, but it's easier. The first thing is to elect a Democrat president and elect a Democratic Congress and House, because we will continue to be sympathetic to students instead of antagonistic by saying one thing and then cutting the ability of kids to go to college. But in the long run, even increasing Pell Grants and cutting interest rates is not going to solve the whole problem. I think that we ought to have a voluntary national service program in this country for 2 years after you get out of high school. If you want to join the military, if you want to go and do the Peace Corps, if you want to do AmeriCorps, if you want to help the people who need tutoring, if you want to help seniors, whatever it is, you join, you give your country 2 years, and then you get a huge break on your college. I think that works in a lot of ways, and this is not always a popular thing at your age group, because people want to get out of high school, they want to get going. But first, you earn a little bit of money while you're doing this stuff. Secondly, you get mixed in with all kinds of people from the rest of America in the most diverse nation on the face of the earth. It's a good thing for everybody to work with everybody else for a while. And I say this without wanting to offend anybody, but most kids, at least it's certainly me, not everybody, but most people, and including me, would have gotten a lot more if I'd waited until I was 20 before I went to college and I had some idea what I wanted to do than I did when I got to be 18 and I went to college and I spent a great deal of time down in the New Haven pub. Because the drinking age was 18 in those days. Let me put it this way, the laws in those days weren't such that you had to have a cottage industry of faking your IDs, but I don't think anybody ever asked for them. But, I mean, it's all fun and games, and it's great to go to college and have a good time, but the fact is college is so expensive that, you'd rather have a good time when you were working, and then when you go to college, you'd like to know what you were doing. And I went to medical school at a late time. I worked for 3 years in a different field. First of all, it taught me what I didn't want to do, which is a valuable piece of information. And second of all, when I got to medical school, I was a lot more relaxed about the exams and everything else because I knew what was really important and what wasn't. And I didn't get caught up in this maelstrom that you get caught up in when you're applying to medical school, which is really, really hard to get into, about this horrendous competitiveness and every last detail matters. Every last detail doesn't matter. There's some things that really matter and some things that don't matter. And when you're older, it's easier to tell the difference. So it's a long answer, but it's really important.
And I don't know